My talk tonight does have a bit of an interesting title: Facts, Technology, and a Little Catharsis. And I've got my email address there on the screen if anybody wants to contact me or come and have a chat to me afterwards. So it is a bit of an odd title for a talk, I have to admit, but there's 3 reasons that my talk is called this, and we'll focus on lightning tonight. I've always wanted to do a lightning talk and talk about lightning because it feels like it does what it says on the tin. We here at DevNQ all really love technology and the interesting ways that it's used. And there are certainly very interesting ways that technology relates to lightning and is used in that sphere. So I thought that would be a really interesting thing to talk about. And lastly, I'm absolutely terrified of thunderstorms, and I always have been. So I thought, what better way to work through that than to have a bit of a chat with friends and face my enemy and learn a little bit about it. So let's have a go. So first off, let's start with what is lightning actually, so that we can understand this beast before we start. So in the most general terms, lightning is a naturally occurring electrostatic discharge during which 2 electrically charged regions temporarily equalize themselves, causing the instantaneous release of boatloads of energy. Which is, thanks to Wikipedia for that one, and also I added a bit of stuff in because I thought it needed some extra info. And there are many, many different types of lightning, but because this is a lightning talk, I can't go through all of these because there are far, far too many. There are very sort of traditional methods with which lightning operates, which we understand quite well. I've highlighted a couple of really interesting ones that I've learnt about. Volcanic, which happens when really heavy plumes of dust explode into the open air out through a volcano, and particles rub together and produce static electricity, and it looks pretty spectacular. There are also elves, sprites, and blue jets, which happen actually above a thundercloud in varying colours and shapes. And there is also the very classic ball lightning that many of you have probably heard of but haven't actually seen, with lots of instances where there's a floating disc of light that appears on an aircraft, usually in a film, but there are actually some documented instances of this in real life, which is quite interesting. So, some facts about lightning. Strikes are actually hotter than the surface of the sun, and this in fact can be many magnitudes hotter, which I thought was really intriguing because you understand it's a huge burst of energy, but that heat is just incredible. There is also rapid heating that obviously happens in quick succession, and that causes the air vibration that we all hear as thunder. Definitely one of my least favourite things. Peak currents in strikes, depending on whether they are positive or negative and the directions, can be hundreds of thousands of amps and at many millions of volts. So absolutely astronomical amounts of power that are released by these events. And lightning can actually strike in the same place twice. Of course, it is statistically unlikely over a really short period of time, but if we're looking at 800 years, 8,000 years, 8 million years, statistically it probably will happen in pretty much the same place. So how can we study lightning using technology? Because we're all technologists and we're interested in what we can do. So there are several open data sets that are provided by different groups, including NASA. So there's actual special sensors on different satellites like the International Space Station, and that provides data for users to download. And also NOAA, who have many, many weather stations to provide this kind of information. There are also some really interesting open source projects like Lightning Tools, which I've actually cloned this repo, and it's built largely on some Jupyter notebooks for some of the work that they're doing. So I've got that going, and that gives us information like this. So you can use the data sets that they have actually consumed to build these kind of really interesting images. So accumulated lightning flashes, different climatology items that provide us information in space, and also some really interesting storm tracking diagrams so that we can see where storms are moving and also the severity of different kinds of storms. There are also some really interesting tools like this one here, which is one of my favourites that I'm going to reload so that you can actually see in real time what's happening with storms in North America. So we can see that there's quite a lot of different lightning strikes happening, which are those round blobs. And if I go here, you can see where the detectors are across the country that are actually saying, yes, I have seen that strike, and this is the detector that reported it. So there's all sorts of really interesting items that can help provide us with this sort of information. We also have quite a few different government-run and private services. For example, the Bureau of Meteorology has a tool called SatView, which provides us with different lightning and strike information. NOAA has a satellite radar. Energex has its own product. And then there's private companies like Earth Networks and UBMet who provide different solutions that can actually be sold to individual companies who might require them for things like, airports who require information about weather, that sort of thing. So after all of this, and after what I have learnt, and after what we've talked about, do I actually need to be scared? Well, according to the CDC, 1/3 of lightning-related injuries actually happen indoors, which makes me feel a little unsettled. But storm monitoring is very extensive. And we know this in Townsville because we're always getting warnings from the Bureau of Meteorology saying, hey, there's severe thunderstorms coming in. Make sure, you park your car, under cover and stay away from trees and all those sorts of things. So it's not like storms are going to turn up and we don't know they're coming. And also, if I find enclosed shelter, I stay away from water sources. I stay off my landline. Remember those? I think some of us had them at some point. I avoid plugged-in electronic devices. I don't lie on concrete floors. I don't lean against concrete walls, and I take off my tinfoil hat. I should be mostly okay. So some final thoughts for context around lightning and risk. The risk of being struck by lightning, according to the CDC, is about 1 in 500,000. So it's not, it's not really likely. This is something that you're probably relatively safe from if you take reasonable precautions. Your risk of being injured by a toilet if you're under 15 is approximately 113 in 500,000. So the risk of being injured by a toilet is about 113 times more than being struck by lightning. So I'm taking a bit of satisfaction from that. And then also, because we are technologists, I thought I'd look up the risk of being killed in some sort of computer-related accident. Now, there was only one reasonable published source that I could find around this, which is the Computer-Related Accidental Death, an Empirical Exploration paper by Donald Mackenzie, which was printed in 1994. And that tells us that of physical causes of death related to computers, 4% were caused by that. Software error caused 3% of deaths, and approximately 92% were failures in human-computer interaction. So thanks to the CDC for those stats, and also to Donald Mackenzie for that wonderful paper. So my final words to you all around safety and lightning is to stay indoors when it's stormy and don't punch your laptop. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions?